welcome to another edition of Carnivore Radio. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. I am not overstating this in my humble opinion. A bombshell yesterday, ramifications that no one really can completely comprehend, and that is the Trump indictment, 34 felonies. Um, First, let's dissect this piece by piece. Your thoughts on the soundness of the charges, and let's before we talk about political stuff, what do you see some of the potential consequences? I see many.
Well, there are many consequences to this. The biggest thing that people have to remember is that this is an historical event. This is the former president ever to be indicted. Now, because this is historic, most pundits, most legal experts expected the indictment to be buttoned up. It was going to be very strong. They were going to have all their ducks in a row because you are setting historic precedent with this. This is, however, not what happened. And legal experts on both sides of the aisle are amazed at how weak this case is. An indictment is supposed to outline what the charges
In
are.
specifics.
Yes, in specific. It is supposed to be the details of what you are accusing the defendant of. This indictment did not do this. This indictment listed 34 counts of falsifying business records. And when you go into it, it's not 34 different counts. It's the same record over and over again. They're using multiple counts because, well, it went on for so long. This is their claim.
Isn't there a statute of limitations as well that could play into this?
There is a statute of limitations on falsifying business information. The statute of limitations is 2 years. That expired 5 years ago.
Okay, so
That's
how did this thing ever see the light of day? I
what
mean,
he
go ahead.
what District Attorney Bragg is trying to do is to bootstrap this into a felony. Falsifying business records is a misdemeanor. He's trying to bootstrap this into a felony by saying it was an ongoing attempt to hide another crime. Now, in his in his comments yesterday, Bragg stated that this crime was election fraud, campaign finance violations. He did not, however, put that anywhere in the indictment. The indictment itself never lists what the crime that Trump is allegedly hiding is. This is a major weakness in the indictment. But the reason I believe that he did not put that in the indictment is that the Manhattan District Attorney does not have the jurisdiction to go after campaign finance
So, I mean,
regulations.
can't this be thrown on as a prima facie case, just dismissed? I mean,
Those
go
those
ahead.
those motions are being filed.
Okay, so
Um,
let's say that happens. Let's say that, forget about the legalese. Let's say it happens. What is the political effect? Because this is a political action. Let's just cut the shit. So, what is the political ramification or ramifications?
if the judge throws the case out based on Trump's motions, the Democrats will have invigorated Trump's election uh, chances. I think there's no way, if he beats this in court and has everything dismissed, that he is not the Republican
A
candidate.
100% convinced. And I'm sorry, I'm blanking. He owns the, or he owns the Blaze Network. kind of fallen a little bit in the crevices. I'll think of him in a second. Sorry, sorry, sorry. But he was an anti-Trumper. He was on last night with Tucker Carlson, and he basically put on the MAGA hat. I want you to comment on what he said. He goes, "This is uplifted Trump beyond Donald Trump. This is now the little man, the average guy who's getting screwed day in and day out versus the elites that escape, a la Hillary, and the list goes on infinitum." I think he's got a point. I think he has. It's beyond Trump. It's all the people that know the deck is stacked against them. All the people that know it's rigged. The Wall Street. The list goes on. And everyone who knows that it's a bunch of bullshit that we live in a free and blah 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 democracy. That's like good, great. Leave it to Beaver, 1950. I think he is right.
Yeah, this shows how the Democrats are stacking the deck. But I will point out, and it has been
Glenn, I'm sorry, Glenn Beck. My fault.
oh,
Glenn Beck.
okay, yes. It has been amazing to watch, but if you watch carefully, there is a big split between Democratic politicians and the Democratic voter, between them and the liberal media, because Democratic voters have been saying this is ridiculous, it's obviously political. Democratic politicians, most of them have been very careful not to say anything because they know this is a dangerous precedent, especially with investigations going on into the Biden family.
100% correct. No, no,
On
but
the
you wait. Let's talk about again centering on ramifications. Now the genie, the cat is out of the box. However, the phraseology you want to use. Basically, it means the district attorney of Hartford, 5 years from now, can indict, Billy Bob Johnson or Nancy Smith, the Democratic president. Blah blah blah. I mean, there is no end to this.
Well, I mean, even more likely, remember, there does still have to be some semblance of a reason to bring. Bragg
But
could
there
not.
was none in this
No, no, no,
case.
no, no.
The
Bragg,
statute of limitations
the,
already ran out.
the
It's a
statute of limit,
misdemeanor.
the statute of limitations ran out. But again, Bragg is trying to bootstrap this into something that will work. However, he would not have even been able to do this had the Trump organization not been based in Manhattan. So there is this, you still need jurisdiction. So, what's a more likely actual occurrence now is that when Joe Biden leaves office, he could be prosecuted by the Delaware prosecutor because that's where Biden lives. That prosecutor was appointed by Trump. So now you've got an actual reason that this investigator, and remember, he's the one that's investigating Hunter Biden. So that, I think, is where it's not going to become helter skelter where every prosecutor is just going after. You're going to be looking at very specific jurisdictions.
Oh, yeah, well, hold on. I disagree a little bit. If you had dealings in Phoenix, Arizona, if you had a business, and I mean, it's not.
Right.
I don't think it's as clear cut as that. So yeah, it might be just be your campaign headquarters. I get it, or in Delaware. You live in Delaware. Your campaign is in Manhattan. But no, you had business dealings in Providence, Rhode Island. You had some in Boston. You get some crazy shithead liberal DA, and he's got a, he wants to. You can, like you said, you can indict a ham sandwich,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
that's where we are.
A DA can indict a hand sandwich, and we just saw it. And in fact, in several cases, I have actually seen pundits referring to this as the ham sandwich.
Well, I think that first of all, I saw Trump's speech last night.
Yes.
I thought it was effective. I'm sorry, I thought it was. I think it's given him and his campaign new ammunition. Anyone that has, anyone that's, you know, I have people that are just Trump could give, Mother Teresa $1 billion, and that would be corrupt. I mean, there's people that just hate Trump no matter what. So this doesn't change anything there. I think what it actually, and I like your comment on this. Like you talked about, mainstream Democrats, whatever, your regular person on the street. I think it raises eyebrows. Like this is a little effed up. Do you think there's any credence to that?
Oh, absolutely. Again, Democrats have been coming out and saying this is obviously a political hit job. This shouldn't be. The split I was referring to earlier is between the Democrats and the liberal media because the liberal media is throwing a party. They've wanted Trump nailed from the get-go. And in Trump's speech last night, he pointed out that District Attorney Bragg campaigned before he ever knew anything about Trump, before he ever met Trump, campaigned on that he was going to nail Trump. There's the other prosecutor, Letitia, that's going after I can't remember the charge now, but she was another one that campaigned on she was going to sue Trump.
Before she
To
even knew
yes,
what was buried under the basket. I think this is no joke. This is very, very, this is aggressive, proactive prosecution. It's like Stalin, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. This
that's
is
exactly what
really, really dangerous.
that's
We are
exact
now at the Banana Republic level. I really believe that.
and we've been saying that for a while using the phrase banana republic, but now it is being used by international leaders. The president of Ethiopia came out and said the United States no longer has any credibility to lecture us
A
about
hundred
election process.
thousand, whoever he is, she is brilliant. We have law. Do not lecture me if I'm some, let's say, a South American country about, the due process and all this crap. That died yesterday. End of
It,
story. No
now,
credibility.
my big hope in all of this, because if this goes to trial, I have no doubt that Trump will be found guilty because this is Manhattan. Democrats outnumber Republicans 8-1. And I don't believe they're going to be able to find a jury that is going to be able to put their political beliefs aside. So I think he will, if it goes to a trial, I think he will be found guilty. I do not believe that will be able to be sustained on appeal, which
Okay, wait a second. But this is, I get all that, but how's he going to run? Basically, they know it's bullshit, but it's enough monkey wrenches to throw into the machine to f him up.
it is. And that's
So then
that
there goes his. Even though people are energized, does this kill Trump's chances?
I don't know if it does or not. The timeline is going to be very interesting because the first hearing in this is going to be December 4th. And the judge specifically said he does want Donald Trump to be at that hearing. December 4th is well into the kickoff of every campaign. So this is when people are crisscrossing the United States making their campaign appearances. So yes, it's going to be detrimental to Trump with that. But I have also heard a lot of pundits saying, well, cable news is going to be covering this constantly. He may get more out of the cable news coverage than he would a campaign stop.
That could very well be, but I
It's so
still get back
I
to. I
don't
get it,
know
but
how it's going to affect it.
I still get back to the serious nature of this. So, what has happened to our legal system? Judges, the law used to be, the logo, the icon of our legal system is justice is blind. So basically, now we've gotten to the point in America with our liberal universities and proactive judges that you're going to get some shithead judge that knows this is a bunch of shit. Let's cut it. Let's get right to the chase. But is so blinded by their hatred of the Republican Party and Trump in particular that they'll go ahead with a show trial. And I use that term purposely, a Stalinistic show trial to dismantle and one of their greatest fears is a second round of a Trump presidency. If that doesn't scare the shit out of anyone, liberal, new, in middle of the road or conservative, then I don't know what to tell you. Am I not correct?
Well, you are correct. The problem is that that cat is out of the bag already. That train's left the station. We've seen that this has already happened. It happened as soon as the indictment was filed. I'm actually sort of falling on the side that I want the show trial. I want the judges to let their political beliefs run wild and convict Trump because let's face it, this this is going to go if Trump is convicted, it's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, especially given a 6-3 majority conservative, is going to overturn this. And a finding by the Supreme Court is the only precedent that will affect every state court and every federal court beneath them. So that is really the only hope right now of putting the cat back in the bag is if it goes all the way to the Supreme Court and they slam this shut.
Isn't it interesting that the judge basically banned cameras? I understand there's legitimate reasons, but I also think there's the bullshit reasons that he doesn't want Americans exposed to the fact that this is one heaping pile of shit.
I think that's part of it.
I know, I get the
Honestly,
part that
I
they
mean,
don't want the show trial. I get that, but still, if the people really knew how the sausage was made, they would be appalled.
I would hope that was the case, but I'm not convinced it is. I think there are enough people that hate Donald Trump to such an extent that it wouldn't matter what they saw. They would be cheering Bragg on, and that would just escalate the and by the same token, there are enough people that no matter what Trump does, they're not going to believe he's guilty of anything. I think cameras in the courtroom would only escalate the problem.
Possibly. The thing that really intrigues me is the anti-Trumpers. Um, Talking about the dumbing down of America. Before he was ever even in office, people were talking, and I'm just going to ask you, why? Please tell me why. You might hate his, but impeach, shoot him, kill him. I mean, and I bet if you asked these people, these geniuses, why, they would say because he's a racist. Just some knee-jerk bullshit reaction. But there's nothing there. They don't know anything about him. They don't know anything about anything.
No, I have spoken to a number of anti Trumpers, and quite frankly, the most vehement among them actually have no knowledge of what Donald Trump is, what he's like, what he did. They're just repeating what CNN and MSNBC and The View have said. So, anybody with any knowledge. Now, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. I don't like him as an individual. I believe his character is seriously flawed. But quite frankly, if it comes down to a choice between him and Joe Biden, and I've said this before, I'm unaffiliated, so I don't get a vote in either primary. If I got a vote in the primaries, I would vote against both Trump and Biden. but I don't have that vote. So if it comes down to Biden versus Trump, I will go with Trump because as president, his policies were much better for America
And
than
that's
Joe
why we have
Biden's.
these show trials, because Biden and his entourage know that this guy is exponentially, day by day, getting intellect. Well, that's the wrong word. Cognitively just disrailed. I saw a video of him, and it wasn't a doctor. He's getting out of a plane or a helicopter, and he has a handler come over to him. Okay, you walk on the blue line, and you see the red line there. That's where you wave, and then you go to the green line, and that's where you do this. So they know that people still vote with their pocketbook. Still, people still have somewhat of a brain left in America, and you got this feeble, just totally inept moron. And I'm sorry, but I mean that honestly. Against someone you might not like. So what happens is the equation shifts. Yeah, but back in 2020, yeah, I don't like Trump, and there's reasons, there's very many reasons not to like him. So you say, I want to get rid of that meanie, moron, nasty guy. I'll go for Joe, and he'll be a place. But now what you see, what Uncle Joe has done, I really truly believe you are not alone. I mean that in all sincerity, and I am not a Trump fan. I think they'll look at numbnuts and say, I'd rather go to I'd rather go with an SOB that can actually save us versus, and in the debate, and I'm going to know I'm transgressing a little bit, but how does Biden even conduct a debate at this point?
Yeah, I don't
Is
know
that
that
possible?
I don't know that he'll be able to. And I actually heard one political analyst speculate that there might not be presidential debates because if Trump is defending himself in court, Biden certainly doesn't want debates. There might not be a debate. And that, quite frankly, is another nail in the coffin of America. We need to hear the candidates go head to
And
head.
that's why this whole thing is completely calculated. I heard another theory that also makes sense is and that's why Biden's holding off on his announcement. He wants to announce in the midst of all of this so people can still revisit the whole Trump is chaos, Biden has a degree of calm. I think this whole thing is orchestrated. I think they know if it was actually mano on mano with Trump or anyone else in the Republican Party, Biden would be electrocuted.
I don't know that Democrats really believe that, though.
Oh no, I'm talking
They,
that. Well, no, see, and I agree with it because I don't really give a shit about Democrats because I disagree with you that there is no such thing as moderate Democrats anymore, and if there are, they're like 10%. I'm talking about your independent and your Republicans that would be able to turn the tide. Democrats are brainwashed; they're increasingly become freakazoids. So that train already left the station. They would vote for a rock versus a conservative.
well, again, I have to disagree with you. There are moderate Democrats, and we actually just saw one switch parties today in North Carolina. One of the Democrats in their state legislature switched to the GOP because, and by the way, this gave the GOP a veto proof majority in their state legislature. So it's going to have a big effect. But she switched parties because the wacko end of the Democratic Party was attacking her because on social media and on her vehicles, she displays the American flag. So you
Oh
have
yeah,
this
I would say
wacko.
that is 65% of the current Democratic Party would totally be on board with that.
You have this wacko, contingent. But most Democrats are looking at Trump that they want Trump to run again because they believe that they beat him once, they can beat him again. And you'll hear pundits say this all the time. They believe that Trump is beatable. I think that if the case goes on too long and Trump can't get the charges dropped, I think it's going to backfire majorly on the Democrats because, and if you remember at this point in 2016, Donald Trump had not announced his candidacy yet. So it is still early in the campaign. I think if it becomes impossible for Trump to run, you're going to see Republican standard bearers come forward, like Tim Scott from Georgia, like DeSantis in Florida. Now, DeSantis has already shot his mouth off and he might have killed his own chances. But Tim Scott is a very intelligent man. He is well liked within the party, and he's an African American, so they can't claim racism.
Well, they can still
I,
claim racism.
well,
No,
yeah,
they've
I
done
mean,
that. No, they've
they did
they.
that with Larry Elder, calling
There you
him
go.
the, yes, the black face of white supremacy. The fact of the matter is, unless you live in Chicago, New York City, or California, you don't fall for that bull.
No, I
But
would agree with that. I hate to say that, but I still believe that in the current state of affairs, 65% of the Democratic Party is totally mashugana nuts crazy. Um, but you talk about what your theory is, and I 100,000% agree with that. Is that I think it's a win-win. How does that sound? I think if Trump's not able to cross the finish line, you're going to have other standard bearers, maybe someone we don't even know. Scott's
right,
certainly one of them we do know that will harness the anger and the outrage to go against Biden in particular and the Democratic whack job wing of the party overall. Do you
right,
agree
and
with that?
absolutely. And I think that is going to be the big problem that Democrats are facing because they know that the left wing wackos that have taken control of the party are not popular across the country, with the possible exception of California, New York City, and Chicago, which
Are all
I mean,
failed.
honestly, I mean, the results of yesterday's mayoral election in Chicago boggles my mind because the big campaign, they went with someone even more progressive than Lori Lightfoot. And the big campaign issue that this candidate put forward against his more moderate Democratic opponent was that he was pro life, which he wasn't, but they just kept lying about it, and that was how they got people. So Chicago, whatever happens to that city, they did it to themselves.
They did it to
But
themselves. It was once a great American city. And what happens is, I'm sorry to tell you this, is when you have a brain drain, an exodus of the productive class of a city like Chicago, you're left with, let's say, what do they call the uninformed, uninformed voter that can be easily hoodwinked. And guess what? It exponentially accelerates the decline. And by the way, your alma mater, your New York City, might
oh,
be on that track
it's
as
it's
well.
already it's already on that track. It's absolutely horrific what has happened to the city, and this is going to bite the Democrats in the ass. And this is why they are trying everything other than legitimate campaigns. I mean, let's take a look at what is going on around the country. You have the indictment against Trump because they've got to get a legal case against him because they cannot fight the fact that they have absolutely failed in after he left the White House. You
Okay,
have
let's no. We need you need to just address that a little more because you're right, and I agree with you. I think what this whole indictment is, and really put the fuel on the fire, is when 2020 was over, they gave a big sigh of relief. The Orange Man is finished, and now after 2.5 years of numbnuts, they know in their heart of hearts and all their internal polling is indicated clearly that Trump would clean Biden's clock given a fair fight. Do you agree with that or
give,
not?
given a fair election, yes, and that's Trump talked about this in his speech last night. And by the way, for anybody that did not see this speech, it was an amazing speech because Trump was very obviously furious. I have never seen Donald Trump this angry. And he did not rant, he did not rave. It was the type of anger. The only time I've ever seen this type of anger is a parent being angry at their child, where they're not yelling,
They're just
they're not hitting,
profoundly disappointed.
they are just speaking very slowly and enunciating every word so you can feel the anger dripping off of them. And
Yes,
this is what he did. And he pointed out every attack that the Democrats have levied against him, including all of the ones that we now know were abjectly false. He listed all of the crimes that the Biden family is being investigated. He listed the crimes that Hillary was let off about. This was just a laundry list of what the Democrats have become. They are no longer a political party, they are a criminal enterprise.
and they are Stalinistic. They
Yes.
are the brown shirts of America, and just like Stalin, just like Lewinsky, they will stop at nothing. Power is their only drug. America, well, they don't like America anyway, but America be damned. Now, you do bring up very interesting point, and I'm glad you did, because I was going to ask you, because I think our listeners would be very interested. Here's what I think. I think CNN, let's talk about CNN. They did show the Trump response press conference, whatever you want to call it. Um, Truth sometimes when it's shown the light of day, if you were a CNN viewer, which is declining rapidly as we speak, but you see Trump's speech, doesn't it kind of throw all the shit that CNN's been saying out the window?
It does. And I think that's why MSNBC chose not to
Not
air it.
to, not to.
And
Rachel
yes,
Moonbeam Maddow.
Rachel
She
Maddow was on last night, which is not usual. She usually is only on Mondays, but they brought her in so that they did not have to show the Trump response
because they
because
knew it would shine some light on hypocrisy. And I still have to ask you the question about CNN. If this is another f up, okay, by Bragg and CNN's on board yet again, that could be the nail in the coffin. Am I going too far? If they're on board with another bullshit conspiracy and they got all their experts talking about the severity of the crime and then it gets acquitted, and by the way, John Bolton, no fan of Donald Trump to any degree, basically stated that the charges are very extremely weak and easily subject to be either um, dismissed or acquitted. So
yeah,
if this thing turns out to be another exercise in futility, does CNN have anything left? Given the fact that their new CEO, who we thought was going to be this knight in shine, has done jack shit, I think they're in real trouble.
I think they are in big trouble. I don't know that their audience is ever going to come back unless they do a clean sweep and get rid of everybody. And I'm talking on air talent, get rid of everyone, replace everyone. Will they do that? I don't know. I mean, clearly they got rid of a lot of people, but not enough.
Yeah,
I
well,
think
actually, speaking on a much lighter note, just real quick, Don Lemon, another true genius of the world, I believe he's got some problems for harassing his female co-hosts, not sexually, but
right.
just, I mean, you need to just say later, dude. Don Lemon accused of misogyny, sending threatening text. This guy is a moron.
Yeah, they need to get rid of him. The problem is all CNN has is the radical left. And with the radical left, he's an African American, he's a homosexual. That's, a get out of jail free card. And
Yeah,
they've got to stop kowtowing to these wacko activists.
yeah.
But
The only problem is, I would say, with well, you're right about CNN. What they have left, they used to have America. Now they just got a bunch of whack jobs. Um, but I have to say that if they don't clean house, I mean, you got 600,000 viewers. It's the same thing. Also, and interesting, and let's to be fair, is it to be interesting is that if you have let's say, a situation even at Fox with Sean Hannity. Do you know that his ratings are in the shitter
it doesn't surprise me.
because
People
people
are,
get sick of hearing bullshit?
yeah, I mean, Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity are just the opposite side of the same coin that Rachel Maddow is on.
Exactly, same
The,
thing. Yeah.
there's very little in the way of truth to anything any of these folks are saying. They're just talking to their followers. And again, that's not news. And to Fox News's credit, they have never claimed that Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity are news. They've said they're commentators, where it took a judge to actually definitively say Rachel Maddow is not a reporter. But it is all ridiculous. And again, we've talked about the echo chamber for well over a decade at this point, and it just keeps getting worse. But right now, you've got the political parties also in that echo chamber. The Democrats don't want to hear anything other than their point of view. They've for a while tried to cancel anybody that disagrees with them. And now you're seeing that they don't even trust the electoral process to save them, because you have the indictments against Donald Trump. In Chicago, you have the media campaign against one of their own, a fairly progressive Democrat who just happened to be a little more moderate and pro police than the guy that got elected. Complete lies being told about him being pro life. You see in Arizona, there is a group called No Labels. These are moderate Democrats for the most part, but there are some moderate Republicans involved as well. This group, for years, has been trying to get the parties to talk, to work together, and to listen to the moderates in both parties. Having very little luck with the extremists in the parties, they decided to go a different way, and they have registered as a political party so that they can run moderate candidates in the presidential election in 2024, in local elections, so that they can get more moderates in power. How did the Democrats respond to this? They are suing not just No Labels, but the Democratic Secretary of State of Arizona, to try to get No Labels off the ballot, because they know if there is a moderate Democrat on the ballot, their progressive wacko candidate stands no chance in hell. And in all likelihood, this will split the Democratic ticket and give the seat to the Republican.
Yeah, but isn't it really the overarching issue is you're talking about radical Dems, increasingly a larger percentage of the party, not interested in democracy, but interested in revolution.
I think that's a very accurate way to look at it.
Power with any means possible. They will destroy the American legal system, a la Mr. Bragg. I don't know where he went to law school. Maybe it was through a drive-up window, but any means possible. But it is interesting. You do bring up moderate Democrats. It's actually there was a news article saying moderate, not the politicians, but your average Joe and Jane on the street is actually pushing back, scratching their heads, if you will, about the Bragg indictment, saying this kind of makes no sense.
Yes, this is what I was referring to earlier when I said, there is a big split between moderate Democrats and the Democratic voters, and the liberal media, who is just feeding the flames of the wackos on the left.
Do you think I was correct? And if you don't think, it's no big deal in terms of life still goes on. That CNN in particular, if this blows up like the Russia Gate and all this other crap, do they sustain serious battle damage? Maybe irrevocable.
I think they will sustain battle damage. I think CNN has one advantage that will keep any damage from being irrevocable, and it's the fact that they're owned by Warner Brothers. Because where we've seen right wing outlets get taken off of cable networks, getting taken off of satellite, Warner Brothers sells their networks as a package. So if a cable network or a satellite provider wants to carry TNT and TBS and Discovery Channel, they have to take CNN as well. So this is going to protect CNN. They may have virtually no viewers, but they will always be able to try to find a way back because they won't lose their carriage.
And maybe that's a two-edged sword because if they had to stand on their own 2 feet, then they might get their shit together a lot quicker than they
That's
will. I
true.
think it
Yes,
might be a situation where, yeah, they're on the dial, so to speak, but no one's dialing them. There you go. You're on
exactly.
you're on the dating site, but guess what? You got no clicks. How
Right.
does that? How do you like that,
They're
Mrs.
they're
Lincoln?
they're on Twinder. They're on Tinder, but nobody's swiping right.
There you go. Well, Dr. Lopkin, a a monumental event and something that we will certainly be talking about next week, correct?
Yeah, I don't see this going away anytime soon. I hope that it does sort of calm down between now and when the motions are filed. But this is not a story that's going away anytime soon.
And before you go, is one of the quintessential points of all this is that the Democrats, the whack job wing of the Democrats, know that it's a sharp knife. They're on a razor's edge. Either this will help them, but it could easily potentially blow them up. Isn't that not correct?
No, I don't think the wacko left wing does know that. The moderates know that. The
No,
moderate that
okay, okay, I'm sorry.
that's
Who knows it is inconsequential. Don't you think that the reality that's better spoken
oh
that the
yes.
reality of this is they are on a razor's edge. It can either work out, which I think the probability is around 30%, or blow up, which is 70%. And if it blows up, it will fundamentally change the Democratic Party and significantly impact the whack job wing of that party.
Yeah, I think this was a huge mistake. It should never have been filed. It is one of those situations that the Democrats get themselves into and they never work out well. And it goes back to Harry Reid removing the filibuster from appointing judges. And how did that wind up? You have a 6-3 conservative majority on the Supreme Court because the filibuster had been gotten rid of. The Democrats are very short sighted. And everything that
And
they, every,
emotionally driven.
yes, and every process that they have tried to repeal or successfully repealed has come back to bite them. And I think this is going to be no different.
Very well stated, as always, Dr. Lopkin. And for our listeners out there, they can access us on virtually every platform, can't they?
Yes, you can. You can find every episode of Carnivore Bites at xvadio.com/podcasts, the Carnivore Radio website, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Audible, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you, the esteemed Dr. Eric Lopkin. We'll do it again next week.
We'll see you then.